And we're going to begin this evening, welcome everyone, with a piece of music uh, by a wonderful group called the Waylon Jennies.
This is the sound of one voice, one spirit, one voice, the sound of one makes a choice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of voices too. The sound of me singing with you, helping each other to make it through. This is the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices three, singing together in harmony, surrendering to the mystery. This is the sound of voices three. This is the sound of voices three. This is the sound of all of us, singing with love and the will to trust. Leave the rest behind and turn to dust. This is the sound of all of us. This is the sound of all of us. This is the sound of one voice, one people, one voice, a song for every one of us. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one voice.
So let's just take a moment, as we often do at the beginning of our gatherings, to make sure you're in gallery view and just take a moment to scroll through and see who is here with us tonight in community. Take a moment to, as you can, look in someone's face, look in their eyes, and just connect person to person. In your heart, feeling a sense of gratitude that we all showed up and that we're here together this evening to learn, to grow, to open, to connect, to care. And as we look at each other, remember that oneness, the oneness we talk about in spiritual teachings is not uniformity. It's not sameness or homogeneity. It's the harmony that we heard in the song, that we are able to bring our differences and the richness and beauty and gifts of our diversity into harmony to create something beautiful in which each one supports the aliveness of the whole and is supported by the health of the whole in turn. So once again, thank you so much for being here this evening for a wonderful exploration of something that you may or may not know anything about, something called prosocial spirituality. And to guide us through the evening, I want to introduce our three guests who will be sharing with you tonight. First is David Sloan Wilson. David is a renowned evolutionary biologist and distinguished professor of biological sciences and anthropology at Binghamton University. Widely known for his fundamental contributions to evolutionary science, and especially for explaining evolution in an understandable way to the general public. David is the co-founder of the Evolution Institute and Prosocial World, and the author of numerous books, including Does Altruism Exist?, This View of Life, and Evolution for Everyone. David worked closely with Nobel Prize winner Lynn Ostrom in articulating the 8 core design principles of effective group functioning so that they can be used for wider application. In the fall of 2019, David was invited to be in conversation with His Holiness the Dalai Lama in Dharamshala as part of the 14th Mind and Life Conference. David was first brought to One Spirit by our very, very dear friend, Kurt Johnson, and I believe actually co-taught a course with Kurt a few years ago on science and spirituality, how they can inform and enhance each other. So we're so delighted to have you with us this evening, David. Thank you so much for being here. Also with us this evening is Jeff Genung. Jeff is the co-founder of Contemplative Life, a nonprofit organization that connects people and communities with transformative practices, and a core founding team member of Transformation 365, an experiential practice network. He also serves as managing director, chief architect, and trustee of Prosocial World, and is the co-founder of Prosocial Spirituality. Jeff has spent many years studying contemplative practices from across the world. He has also created many short films on spiritual practice and contemplative practice, and he is currently focusing on the integration of science and spirituality, the arts and technology, with the aim of creating a more balanced and caring world. Jeff and brother Wayne Teasdale, the author of The Mystic Heart and the person who coined the term interspirituality, were very close friends. And I had the pleasure of meeting Jeff at the Parliament for World Religions in Toronto in 2018, and we have been working together weekly ever since. So thank you so much for being here, Jeff. And finally, last but certainly not least, Kate Sheehan Roach. Kate is a writer and historian who serves as developmental editor to some of today's great spiritual teachers. She was honored to craft the curriculum and serve as facilitator for the very first Prosocial Spirituality training. Having served as the founding editor of Contemplative Journal and managing editor at pathos.com, Kate is now director of content for Contemplative Life and a core member also of Transformation 365. A certified centering prayer facilitator, Kate serves on the national boards for Contemplative Outreach and the United Religions Initiative, and is a member of several spiritual communities, including an interfaith group based in Philadelphia called Holy Experiment, and an interspiritual virtual gathering, along with Jeff, called Contemplative Communion. And Kate is also part of the group of us. I've known Kate since before the Parliament, but Kate was part of the group that came together with Jeff and myself and a few other people at the Parliament to form Transformation 365. So we are part of a contemplative practice group together ever since then. So thank you, Kate. Welcome. So glad to have you here. And I think you're going to move us into the evening.
I will. Thank you so much, Diane. What a great honor it is to gather at the gathering with One Spirit. I have been a fan of One Spirit Learning Alliance for many years, through many friends that I know who are alumni of your program and great teachers that I've met there back when you were in Midtown. And I look forward to meeting all of you and many more in this amazing partnership that we're here to talk with you about tonight. So thank you, Diane, for inviting us, and thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, David Renata, for helping us make it easy to come together in this rather extraordinary time when so many of us are apart from one another. But I feel very much together with you here virtually with One Spirit. So what we're sharing when we share prosocial spirituality is a collaboration that really embodies what we're here to experience together and explore together. Prosocial world and contemplative life are the partners that have come together to form this this experiment called Prosocial Spirituality. Prosocial World is a nonprofit organization that is committed to offering trainings that help create a more pro-social world, a world just like the title of this gathering, that's moving from me to we. This based on evolutionary science, the idea that humans are evolving toward cooperation. You may have read an article written by our friend Kurt Johnson in Cosmos Journal called Evolving Toward Cooperation. If not, I'll share that link with you. So Prosocial World and Contemplative Life, which is another nonprofit organization that is committed to connecting people and communities with transformative spiritual practices. So those are sort of the two axes of, if you see a matrix of prosocial spirituality, we have the vertical line of spirituality, which is that both grounded and heavenly vertical axis of our spiritual development, and the horizontal axis being prosocial, being this idea that we are moving from self-interest to the good of the whole. That's the two matrix. That's the matrix of prosocial spirituality. Coming together with you at One Spirit, we're adding a new dimension to that, and that's research. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. But I want to ask David, Renata, to place in the chat some links that will help you explore further. We don't want to take a ton of time talking about contemplative life and prosocial world and prosocial spirituality, but you can explore those websites. But also the initiative that we're sharing tonight, specifically with One Spirit. It's a perfect fit. When we decided to reach out to an organization, it was kind of a no-brainer to reach out to One Spirit, and you'll see why. If David, Renata would share the first slide, we're announcing a very exciting research initiative that is funded by the Templeton Religion Trust. And I shared that link to this website with you so you can learn more about it. But just moving forward to the next slide, David, this is where you'll know. When I read this to you, you'll know why we're at One Spirit. You'll know how obvious it is that we would connect with you. This is the research initiative funded by Templeton Religion Trust that we're calling Prosocial Spirituality. Here's what they have to say about it at Templeton. Changing the conversation about religion. Religion is on the move, and why shouldn't it be? Developments in the sciences regularly lead to new breakthroughs. We're learning more and more each day, and as we do, we're realizing how little we actually know about the world, other people, and ourselves. Ever curious, we're eager to learn, and that's just how it should be. Religions of all kinds should be no different. Learning from our mistakes, we can evolve and grow. We can make progress. We can learn more about what Sir John Templeton called spiritual realities, addressing a wide range of questions. What if religions asked more questions and supported more research? What if religions engaged one another across their deepest differences? We're addressing these questions through the work of our grantees. And thanks, David. You can drop the slide now. I don't know if you could all read that, so I wanted to read it out loud to you. But so that's what we're here to share with you tonight, that prosocial spirituality is one of the grantees that the Templeton Religion Trust is talking about. And as we talked about where we could apply this grant, our first thought was One Spirit Learning Alliance. So we're going to share more with you about that. But I think, I think I'll turn it over to David Sloan Wilson now to hear straight from the evolutionary scientist himself more about prosocial.
Okay, thank you so much. Such an honor to be here. And if we could have the next slide, David R., and then we'll launch right into this. So it was indeed an amazing opportunity for me to have a 1-hour conversation with His Holiness. I was allowed to bring one guest, and I chose Kurt Johnson as that person. It was an unforgettable experience. But what it represented, I think, was even more a union between science and spirituality, and not just science, but evolution per se. His Holiness loves science and has been meeting with many scientists, but mostly it's the science of the mind. And I was actually maybe even the first evolutionist to have this opportunity to talk with His Holiness. And the main point that I wanted to get across is that in addition to inner transformation, which of course Buddhism and mindfulness practices of all sorts, and which cause a person to become more compassionate, there also needs to be an outer transformation of our societies, large and small, from our smallest groups, such as our relationships with other individuals, all the way up to the whole planet, needs to be transformed in addition to our minds. And this is not automatic. It is not the case that if you somehow could make everyone as compassionate as His Holiness, that they would automatically self-organize into a well-working society. And Kate used the words vertical and horizontal. Those words are quite often used when talking about religion and spirituality. The vertical is your relationship with the divine, or your concept of the sacred. It orients the individual to something larger than themselves. That's the inner transformation. The horizontal is our relationships with our fellow people. And in any enduring religion, we have both. We have the theological aspects, and we also have, of course, the congregations, the churches with all their rules and so on and so forth. Somehow we need to work with both, and we have to do it in a modern context, not just a traditional religious context. And so the next slide, David, is the other special person that I've been blessed to work with. There she is, Eleanor Ostrom, winning the Nobel Prize in economics. And she took a giant step towards deriving the core design principles that enable social groups to function well. This is the horizontal dimension of any social group, spiritual or not. And if we go to the next slide, we'll show them to you very, very briefly. I'm not even going to list them because that would take too long. But what I am going to do is to invite you, if you take part in the project that we are inviting you to take part in, then this is what you'll be learning about and incorporating into the groups of your lives in detail. And I can say science says that your group will work better, no matter what your objective is. Your group will have a stronger sense of purpose, will cooperate better if you incorporate these core design principles. That's what prosocial is. And what this particular grant enables us to do is not only to provide these core design principles in order to make groups strong in the horizontal dimension, but also to provide spiritual elements that make groups strong in the vertical dimension, to make groups strong in both dimensions, and to do it in a way which is we could actually conduct scientific research. And if that kind of scares you off or seems intimidating, please don't, because this is also something which is a fulfilling spiritual experience as well. And I think Kate and Jeff can speak to that. And so that's the opportunity, really an extraordinary opportunity for you, for the people listening, to become involved, not just themselves, but the groups of their lives, no matter what those groups are, to, I think, a grand experiment, a grand fusion of science and spirituality that can make our lives, always spent in groups, never alone, always spent in groups, better. So now I'd like to pass, who next? Is it Jeff that's next?
It's Diane.
Yeah, I'm next. Thank you, David. Thank you, Kate. I think all of us, certainly who have been part of spiritual communities, have witnessed and experienced in a very personal way that being spiritual, as David said, is no guarantee that we will function in a healthy or effective way as a group, as a community. So I think that there is tremendous, tremendous value in people whose, much of whose lives and value systems center around spirituality, to have an opportunity to actually understand what allows groups to function harmoniously and effectively, where everyone who's part of the group feels a sense of honored participation and valued participation. The prosocial world has been in existence and doing this work with groups for many, many, many years. And as David said, the new initiative that Templeton is interested in is really, how does introducing a focused exploration of spiritual principles and spirituality enhance our ability to function effectively within groups. And it sort of makes sense that if people in groups are more spiritually mature, that they would turn out to be better group members with more of a capacity to take into consideration the needs and perspectives of other people in the group as well. The framework of spirituality that seemed to be so appropriate to combine with looking at the core design principles are Wayne Teasdale's 9 elements of a mature universal spirituality. We can go on to the next slide, David. This is a picture, obviously, of Brother Wayne when he was much younger, meeting with the Dalai Lama. Brother Wayne was a Catholic monk in the world, as he referred to himself. He was one of the organizers of the 1993 Parliament of World Religions, which was held on the 100th centennial anniversary of the first, and at that time only, Parliament of the World Religions, where Swami Vivekananda brought Eastern teachings really for the first time in a widespread way to the Western world, and caused really an incredible explosion of interest in Eastern teachings and East-West dialogue. Go on to the next slide, David. This is a picture of Brother Wayne, a bit older. Wayne was the author of The Mystic Heart, which is the book in which he coined the term interspirituality. And as I've shared with many of you over time, encountering that book was really a significant part of my own inspiration for starting One Spirit to be a learning center that would support the evolution of consciousness that Brother Wayne referred to as the coming interspiritual age. In The Mystic Heart, he articulates 9 elements of what he calls a mature universal spirituality. David, you can go on to the next slide. And part of what these elements are is that if you look at mature practitioners, highly developed beings and teachers and practitioners across religious traditions, despite their differences in cultural expression and in language, there are certain personal qualities that they all share, that they all have in common, and that are recognizable beneath and despite that diversity. And these are having a fully actualized moral and ethical capacity, a quality of living in solidarity with the entire cosmos, with all living beings, cultivating and living a life of deep nonviolence. They all share a palpable humility. They all engage in regular, committed spiritual and contemplative practice. They cultivate mature self-knowledge, which includes both an awareness of their shadow and their limitations, and an awareness of their highest potential, the highest potential that exists in our human nature. They have a quality of living with simplicity, being of selfless service and engaging in compassionate action, and empowering and embodying the prophetic voice for justice, compassion, and world transformation. So, part of the prosocial spirituality training will also involve being introduced to, not simply in a conceptual way, but in very applied reflection to how we live our own lives and where we are on our spiritual journey towards spiritual maturity, looking at each of these elements and having an opportunity to commit to going deeper in our development of them. So, David, you can drop the slide and we'll go on now to Jeff.
Thank you. And it's really good to be here. I have not had a chance to be at the gathering personally, but I have had a chance to watch some of the recordings of it. And so it's really beautiful to be with you in this way. You know, I imagine all of us have had situations where you try new things and it feels like pushing a rock up a hill. And then other things where it feels like there's wind in your sail. This prosocial spirituality initiative feels like what I call stepping onto an escalator of grace. And every step that we take, something's taking a step or two for us. And like the core design principles that came from Eleanor Ostrom and the 9 elements that came from Wayne Teasdale, it actually came through them. In neither cases did they kind of think them up. What they did is they were paying attention to something that's coming out of the collective awareness of humanity, both in the social and cultural context, but also in the spiritual context. And so we're seeing, you know, the influences of, it seems like we're getting help, if you know what I mean. And it's not merely coincidental that this, the debut of Prosocial Spirituality Initiative will be in partnership with One Spirit. So thank you all for being here. What I'd like to do is to go on a journey together, to take a few minutes and, you know, kind of walk down memory lane, do a reflection exercise together. And so I invite you to just settle in and close your eyes if that feels comfortable, or if you leave them open, a soft gaze, and turn your sight inward. And as we gather our attention, let's take it back, way back, and try to remember some of the earliest spiritual experiences that you had, the keepers, the ones that helped to form your essence. You kind of feel them, sense what that was like to look through those eyes and feel in that heart and mind and body. As you feel this powerful and lasting experience, try to connect it to everyone else's on this call, because it's happened to everyone. So now we feel that collectively together. Remember now some of our first experience with spiritual or religious community. It came out of our tradition that was handed down by our family. And it may have been secular and contemplative, or it may have been religious. But remember some of the community experiences, the gatherings, the rites, the rituals, the things that helped us to remember, the things that helped us to feel our connection with the mystery, but also feel our connection with each other. As we remember that, try to feel into that community experience that we're all experiencing, that we're all remembering. As we continue the journey, feel how the experience of community and tradition changed over time. When we became aware of other communities, other traditions, other rites and practices. What did that look like? What did that feel like? We can remember back in a similar time when religion and spirituality was going through changes as a whole. The birth of the interfaith movement, when traditions became more accepting and more tolerant of other traditions. The growth and the movement into dialogue, moving from interfaith to interreligious, from tolerance to dialogue and open sharing. And as we continue the journey and remember our experiences with spirituality, with community, with tradition, we can kind of feel into the edge that we're at today, going beyond dialogue and openness and into a communion with other traditions, inter-spirituality, where we practice each other's practices, where we're enriched by each other's wisdom, not to change our own, but to enrich each other. And as you feel that, feel into what it looked like, what it felt like when you first came in contact with this remarkable offering called One Spirit, this unique alternative. What did that look like? What did that feel like? You can kind of feel it now. And we can feel it together. As we hold that, we hold the journey of the prior, and then feel all of that in the context of the present. Now let's cast our gaze out into the future, standing on the shoulders and the foundation of all that's gone before, the evolution of spirituality, groups and communities. And then envision community and spirituality in the future. What might it be like? What kind of community do you yearn for? Would you like to be a part of? What kind of community do others yearn for? What type of spirituality do others want to experience? And as we envision and imagine what that might be, we can also reflect on the gifts that we have now, the gifts that have come both from the past and from antiquity, but also from the future. The gifts here that come from evolutionary science and the knowledge of how to cooperate together to flourish as a group and a community, but also the wisdom and the insight that comes from all of the great traditions and how they serve as stewards to deliver the goods of transformation to the faithful, to the communities that they serve. And having these two streams come together. And as we bring our attention back to this particular place and time and space, I'll just bring all that with us. Welcome back.
Thank you, Jeff, for guiding us in that beautiful visualization. I think the question that comes to me is, what's next, and how can we participate as we invite people from One Spirit to consider prosocial spirituality, to consider joining us in this research initiative. I'd love to open up to questions from people, but also I'd love to just give the details on the trainings that will be offered to groups affiliated with One Spirit as part of this Templeton Religions Trust funded initiative. So without any cost to One Spirit participants, group trainings that will give you all the details that we've been alluding to in the merging of pro-social world and contemplative life, these core design principles that David shared from Lynn Ostrom, and the 9 elements of a universal spirituality that Diane shared together in a group training. So we're eager to hear from you and to hear what interests you, what you're curious about. We have a little bit of time for some Q&A, and David and Jeff are sort of the embodiment of this working together of contemplative life and pro-social world. They're embodying the type of cooperation that we're evolving toward. So I'd like to open the floor to questions.
Kate, can I also invite if anyone saw anything from the future in that reflection process that feels really important to share in a very crystalline, concise way. As we say at One Spirit, we always say, "Blessed are the brief, for they will be invited to speak again." So feel free to share that as well. We had Michael was, I think, or Adele is first.
So thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. And I did not see into the future, so I can't get that. But in preparation for tonight, I actually went to the Prosocial website and was deeply moved and impressed. And so I'm very interested in finding out more information and what does this entail. And yeah, I'm in the second year seminary class, and so it's wonderful for moving on. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Adele. Michael.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I did not read the website, so I guess it would, I don't know, it would be helpful to hear some details about what it is. And I guess my practical question is, if I'm in second year seminary, is it a stupid idea to take this on, or is there room for doing both?
Probably the first training will begin sometime in the summer. So
Okay.
by that time, it's not 100% certain, but you will be finished with your second year by then.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, and David Sloan Wilson, do you want to say anything more about some of the foundation for prosocial in the understanding of the difference between kind of multi-level, in evolutionary theory? Did we lose David?
Nope, I'm here. Well, I would like to say a little more about the practical, what it would be like to do it. And also to hear from the people here as to what kind of groups that they're in their lives, especially any group associated with One Spirit. If you're an alumni, do you preside over a group? Are you a leader of a group? Is there any groups that you meet with on a regular basis? If not, would you like to form such a group? And if you can just imagine being in a group that you meet with regularly, hopefully this group is attempting to do something important together, it's a meaningful group, then that's where we would hope that you would become involved with prosocial, and not to think of it as something extra, but as thinking it as something actually that will just make that very same group that's important to you function better. And if you invited us into those to that group, then I think that the principles that we're teaching, both the vertical and the horizontal principles, will quickly prove their worth. And I think that Jeff and Kate can speak to this because they're in such a group, their contemplative communion group. And because our time together is limited, I would just love to have others speak as to the groups in their lives, and just to make it a little bit more familiar as to what you might be getting into, and especially not to think of it as more work. It's less work. If your group works better and is more fulfilling, so that when you meet, your cup is filled rather than drained, then it's less work, not more. And so with that, I would just love to have other people speak.
Margaret, you were next.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll just say that the vision I had was like this funnel
that went like this. And, you know, the traditions and everything from the past was there. And then it became just such a beautiful mix of tradition and I, you know, I'm involved. Well, so this will bring me to two things. I'm involved with a Universalist Unitarian congregation out here, and the church burnt down 5 years ago when I first got here. And I thought, oh my God, that's wonderful because we can start over and bring in new people. And that's one of the things, because this was a very older group of people. The other group I'm involved in is the Pachamama Alliance, and I meet monthly with a group, and we're very involved in creating a more wonderful world, and we're spiritual also. So those are two groups I'm involved with. I'm also involved with my local library and the Democratic Committee. I mean, there's a lot, but those two, yeah. So anyway, it sounds really interesting. I don't even know what you're talking about, but it sounds great to me. So curious to hear more too.
Thank you, Margaret. Rob.
So I graduated in 2019, and my assignment of ministry was with our Quaker meeting here in Concord, New Hampshire. And as I was hearing the presentation and during the meditation, my vision of the future was a lot of groups that were very similar to the Quaker worship that I do every week here. And I'm not quite sure how it would be to bring our Quaker meeting in as a participant, but I would be curious to see how many of the characteristics are the same or different.
You're muted, David.
Yeah, if I might respond to that, Rob, that's a great question. And what we find is that the most enduring groups, the groups that last the longest, is because they have converged upon these very principles. And the Quaker movement would be a beautiful example. And if you looked at Quaker practices, just take decision-making as one, and the beautiful egalitarianism and inclusion of decision-making in a Quaker meeting is scores very high. Scores very high. And yet I wager if you were to take a lot of Quaker meeting groups, you'd find that they would vary. Some would do very well, others poorly. Every group does. Every group does. And to become more mindful of them, to think of them in a different way and to approach them from a different angle, to do an assessment of it, for these to be brought to your attention and so on and so forth can be useful for any group. And even a group that scores well will be affirmed by the fact that they're, you know, so they get an A on their report card, good for them. It's still going to be useful, and of course, always room for improvement.
I imagine that the metaphor of shadow that applies to us as individuals also applies to the groups that we're a participant with. And I can attest that the different Quaker groups that I've been involved with have had different levels of that present.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rob. Anyone else share about groups that you're a part of? Wendy.
So I don't know how much of a group this is, but I work for a company here in Michigan that started out as an insurance company, and now we're growing to be an automotive lifestyle company. And I am an accounting clerk in this company that has about 1,000 people. We're growing by leaps and bounds. And there is a wellness team, and they do a wellness connection talk every Wednesday. And they talk about things like we do have meditation that is offered in our work environment. They do talk about mindfulness. They also talk about financial wellness. They talk about nutrition, but they haven't talked about the spiritual piece, even though there is a spiritual piece of the wellness wheel pie that they put out. And so I offered to do a talk in a few weeks on spiritual practice. And I've just been sort of second guessing myself and asking myself why I've wanted to put myself out there because people know me as the expense report person and not Reverend Wendy in this work environment. So listening, going through that meditation and that visioning process, it was sort of a reaffirmation for me that I am feeling something and I am sensing something. And this is a corporate culture that's very healthy in many respects. We read the Growth Mindset book together, Carol Dweck's book. So it's a great and exciting environment. So I'm getting to dip a toe into bringing the spiritual piece into this conversation, and I don't know how it will be received, and we're just calling it an experiment. And I'm terrified and also excited, and so we'll just see how it goes. So I don't know that this is a group that I can necessarily offer, but it's just an experience that I'm really in the middle of right now, and I'm grateful for this gathering tonight.
Thank you, Wendy. Michael is next.
Good evening, everybody. Hi, I'm 2017 One Spirit grad, and also went through the Emergence Leadership Academy at One Spirit. I'm always looking on how and to be a better leader, and I'm leading a Unity Church right now, and I just started thinking of a lot of the things that we do is we work on, we do the inner work and working with ourselves. We can do that to evolve from me to we, and I think that would just be a very powerful thing in that environment.
Thank you, Michael. Martha.
Hi, I'm also from 2017. Hey, Michael, good to see you. I would just offer, I'm in a small little group that works on, it kind of is a form of a book club, but we really are trying to dedicate ourselves to an expanded kind of spiritual awareness of the books that we read are in that arena, and then having a kind of a space to share all that together. There's only about 6 of us. But the other one that I'm curious to wonder if it's an appropriate thing to put out there, and it's because it is a new group for me. I'm just beginning some of my work through One Spirit with conversations that are being held about diversity, equity, and inclusiveness. And it just, I'm kind of breathing in a bag with some of the stuff that we're talking through in terms of how all that's going to, or my role, and not many people very, very proficient in that, but it just hearing David Sloan talk about the fact that, even places that have a lot of good things in place can always still be doing this kind of check-in, this assessment, and making sure that the work, which is the important part, is, aided by that. So I throw that out there.
If I could very quickly add to that, Martha, I think what we have going here is very relevant to inclusion and diversity. The core design principles are inherently equitable. And when you form a strong group identity surrounding what the group is doing, and if the group is doing something valuable, other differences sink into the background. Other differences sink into the background because the primary social identity is what the group is doing. And so I would, any diversity, equity oriented group, I think, we would love to include such groups.
Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. Eleni.
Hi, thank you. I'm Eleni, a class of 2013, and I'm currently in ISC. And the groups I'm involved with are in Amma Satsang, Amritananda Mayima, who's part of the interspiritual movement in the parliament as well. And also I work for a large community arts organization in Massachusetts where I live right now. And I'm the director of a school outreach program in 2 districts where we use mindfulness and social emotional learning. We teach mindfulness and social emotional learning through the medium of music. The school itself that I work for is really also focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion right now. And I'm not so sure this would be a perfect fit, but I just wanted to throw it out and thank you for this presentation.
Thank you, Lenny.
Mm-hmm.
Sean.
Good. All right. I've unmuted. I'm just wanted to share within the last 2 days, I have become acquainted with eco-social work, evolutionary psychology, now the concept of prosocial spirituality. And beginning Monday, I'll be taking a course on designing powerful solutions with and within community at Eastern Mennonite University, which is part of their peace building program and is known for having international student involvement. Each of these things, the eco-social work was in respect to the environment, agriculture, looking at indigenous populations and being able to take some of the methods of yesteryears and putting them together with the technology of today for the betterment of our environment. The evolutionary psychology spoke about how we should be moving with evolution to a point of desiring to work together for all of our survival. And it's you know, I'm always moved when the universe brings to me what seems to be very similar concepts that are coming from slightly different perspectives, but basically, especially in times as these, have much to offer in terms of resolving the conflicts we're dealing with. So I just wanted to share those concepts, and I'm curious what this means, what you know, all of this coming together at this time presents.
Thank you, Sean. So to be respectful of our time parameters, I think we're going to move toward closing our evening. I don't see any other hands up at the moment. In terms of what's next, we will be sending out in the next graduate newsletter more information about the research project and the trainings that will be available and opportunities for you to express your interest in participating. So be on the lookout for that. If you are on this call and you are not a graduate, for example, the second year students, Kate, would you put your address in the chat so that people can reach out to you directly for more information and to express interest? We're going to close with a piece of music, and then we'll say our thank yous to David, Jeff, and Kate, and our David. This is a song about the future.
I have a dream.
You may think this is hysterical, hey, that I believe in miracles. Yes, I believe in things my eyes have never seen. it's a new day dawning, and I can hear the angels calling. Oh yes, it is a new day dawning. It's gotta be universal love. Oh yes, there is a new day dawning. New day, angels calling. Oh yes, there is a new day dawning. It's gotta be universal love. I heard that faith can move mountains, yeah, and all you've got to do is believe. Heard a rumor I'm a dreamer, but in this world you've got to be. How will we cope without hope? How will we fly if we don't try? How will we learn if we won't yearn for understanding? Hey, I gotta know, hey, I believe there is a new day dawning, and I can hear the angels calling. Oh yes, there is a new day dawning. It's gotta be universal. Time to get ready for the new day dawn. New day, angels call. Hallelujah. There is a new day dawning. It's gotta be universal. Gotta be. Blow the songs, man. Rough. New day, everybody ball. If you parade, new day, everybody ball. New day, everybody ball. If you parade, new day, everybody ball. Know that the spiritual climate is a warming. Showers of blessing just keep on falling. I hear the archangels them calling. Yo, this is not the time to be stalling. Stop the yawning and you performing. Listen the warning, new day is dawning. A message from the bright and morning star to the people them near and far. Follow me again, new day dawning, and I can hear the angels calling. Oh yes, this is a new day dawning. It's gotta be universal love, sweet love. New day dawning, and I can hear the angels calling. Oh yes, this is a new day dawning. It's gotta be universal love. Come on, come on, come on. New day dawning. New day. Angels calling. Hallelujah. New day dawning. It's gotta be universal. Gotta be.
So once again, can we just express our appreciation to David Sloan Wilson, Jeff Genung, and Kate Sheehan Roach for being here with us tonight. We do this to say this was delicious, just delicious. So thank you to all three of you. Thank you, David, Renata, as always, for being our tech maestro. Thank you to all of you. And we will look forward to letting you know more about prosocial spirituality and the opportunities that are available to you to participate in these trainings. As you think about the groups that you're part of, they don't have to be huge groups either. They can be the way Wendy Desautel was talking about being part of a team within a larger organization that's working together, or someone like Michael, perhaps your board, or if you have a ministry team that you work with in your congregation. All of those would be wonderful to bring in. Even many of you are in study groups that go back to when you were students at One Spirit that have continued to work together. That might be a possibility. So lots of things to think about. And again, thank you so much for being here. David, can we unmute everyone and just let people say goodnight?
Thank
Hi,
you so much.
Susie, Brenda.
So good.
Hey.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Shalom.
Good night.